What folklore creature do you think really exists? The Kraken is almost definitely an extra thick colossal squid and I want him found. Forget it. Too big for calamari. As a Kraken lover, that is the best description I have ever heard. If there was an undiscovered folklore creature somewhere, I'd put all my money on it being one of the ocean ones. Loch Ness Monster, Kraken, etc. Some sort of sea monster. The ocean is so incredibly big and goes insanely deep. Who knows what we can't see in the depths? Edit. To everyone hitting me with the loch means lake not ocean. Yes, I am very aware of that. But it is called the Loch Ness Monster because it was seen in Loch Ness. A lake which is very much connected to the ocean through River Ness. Which means if it is real, there's a chance it's from the ocean. Making it a sea monster. Although to be fair, I have no idea how big the river is. But it could have slipped through the river when it was a baby and grew up in the lake. It could be argued that giant squids are what was believed to be krakens, especially seeing how they're so rare. Yeah, but the kraken is real, sorta. Giant squid are a thing, and wouldn't need all that much exaggeration from a bored sailor to become the kraken. Most of the ocean things I wouldn't be surprised by. Considering coelacanths were thought to be extinct until relatively recently, I think it makes sense that there's all sorts of crazy shit down there that we might never discover. It's like trying to find a needle in a haystack. Also Mothman, just because I think it's hilarious and too ridiculous to be fake. If Mothman did exist it would be fucking terrifying. I kind of feel obligated to believe in the Mothman because my relatives reported the first sighting in America. Which, funny enough, I only discovered on accident while listening to an episode of Lore. Might not be new to most people, but the jackalope actually does exist. Technically, the jackalope is a North American legend, a rabbit with antlers. In reality, it's a rabbit suffering from a virus that causes weird growths on its head. Wait, jackalopes are mythical? Damn, I just always assumed they were real for some reason. Megaconda. It's just a really big anaconda, and since those snakes grow continually throughout their lives, I wouldn't be surprised if some have, in the past, gotten over 50 feet or more. There are unconfirmed sightings of anacondas around that length actually. The problem with confirming these things is that you would have enough people, and strong people at that, to hold it out all the way extended and measure it, or you would have to kill it somehow, before it got away. So like, basically impossible. Megaconda. Well, there was the Titan boa, and that thing is massive. Especially considering how dense the atmosphere was back then, I wouldn't doubt that there was a gigantic anaconda as well. Russian Yeti. There was a 3-hour documentary on Discovery and it freaked me out. It's actually just a typical Yeti, but it squats and wears a tracksuit. Somebody wanted me to go on an expedition in the Ural Mountains to find a Yeti. They provided me with audio titled Yeti Screams and I declined. First of all, they are probably not real, and second of all, who the fuck wants to find a Yeti? Those things are horrifying and fuck knows if they're aggressive or not. Okay, I'm kind of amused by this one. I just googled it and the primary image is from the Dyatlov Pass photos, the one where you can tell the jacket is a different color from the pants. Was the whole show about the Dyatlov Pass deaths? Because other than whatever caused them to leave the tent, those aren't that mysterious. I'd love to believe that one day when we have mastered the whole space travel thing, we will detect alien life on another planet which will freak everyone out, mass panic. Then we go to their planet for a little look and it's just a bunch of Ewoks jabbering about being adorable. But Ewoks are terrifying. They eat other sentient creatures and can fight and win over a technical superior trained soldiers. That Japanese creature with an eye on his butthole that runs up to you and moons you while looking at you. Sure, I'm Japanese, lit. Buttocks eye is a strange yokai with an eye in the place of his anus. The story goes as follows. Long ago, a samurai was walking at night down the road to Kyoto when he heard someone calling out for him to wait. "Who's there?" he asked nervously, only to turn around and find a man stripping off his clothes and pointing his bare buttocks at the flabbergasted traveler. A huge glittering eye then opened up where the strange man's anus should have been. That's just Shinzu with his fancy butt plug. He does that when he gets too drunk. The sea bear. The techniques to keep it away are very complicated. That's an oval. It has to be a circle. Unicorns, or as the modern world know it as rhinoceros. It's kind of hilarious that the entire reason the concept of a unicorn exists is that the closest thing shitty artists could relate to while trying to draw a rhino was a horse. Early elephant drawings are also horribly inaccurate. There's weird shit in the deep woods. I heard the Pope goes out there to do his business. I've lived in and around significant mountain ranges, and some deep forests in the south. Heard bears and wolves and mountain lions calling out of the deep woods. The thought of a wendigo or goatman scares the piss out of me. Weird shit happens when you get too deep in the forest. I would not be terribly surprised for us to discover a North American ape or monkey living in the deep woods. But I will be shocked if it is more than 2 feet tall and 50 pounds. We humans are unbelievably bad at estimating size and distance. Ask any hunter about ground shrinkage, and that is on an animal they love and know passionately and spends years staring at. Someone catching a glance of something odd and remembering it huge is not even a little unusual. The two I think are most likely. The Kraken. Giant squid have finally been conclusively proven to exist in the last decade or so. It's not beyond belief an even larger variety is out there, or was still extant in the age of sailing. The other is Bigfoot Sasquatch. While the most well-known sighting recording has been proven a hoax, the stories of them go back hundreds of years in native tribes. The description is not that far off from the Gigantopithecus that once really did exist. While it seems unlikely a sustainable breeding population of those could have remained alive this long, it's not impossible. We've rediscovered other species thought extinct, and the Pacific Northwest is huge and there are a lot of very remote forests. I'm a lot more dubious of this one, but these are the two that seem the most plausible to me. Edit. I've been told multiple times that the Patterson film was not disproven, so I stand corrected on that. For some reason I thought I heard he recanted it as a hoax, but I am in error. Sir Vivian Lestrade is the one person who keeps my fascination of Bigfoot alive. That man has spent more time alone in the wilderness than most. He spent a year living in a remote cabin in Ontario and has talked about an encounter that he couldn't explain. There are few television personalities that I would trust more than Lestrade. He is a credible dude. I don't think it's necessarily likely %, but my family are Irish and they hardcore believe in the fair folk, or the AOSC. They're not exactly fairies, they are different. Mina. You don't fuck with them, basically, and if something's going horribly wrong in your life it's probably because you fucked with them or you made them angry. And you have to be careful how you talk about them, too. Kind of like with skinwalkers, you don't name them. You just call them the fair folk, or the folk. They mostly hang out and try to get you to owe them a favor. You don't take anything from the folk, or you owe them one, and you don't want to be in that position. There's lots of different types that do lots of different things, though. I don't want to come off as that weirdo who believes in what is essentially fairies, but I grew up with the stories and I have a healthy level of skepticism about this. I'm not saying they're real, but I'm also not about to step into a fairy circle anytime soon. Especially not at dusk. We want them stories be. Fairy is a misleading word for the AOSC or the Cid. Forgotten gods are closer to what they were known as in pre-Christian Ireland. They were the gods in Ireland before Christianity feared beyond measure. Who battled the demonic Fomorians and drove them into the sea and lived in another world, and when the Christians came and tried to change the story to make them more mythical, they become the angels who lived in neither heaven or hell and instead lived in another world watching earth and messing with mortals. They were terrifying, but the thing that always creeped me out was how they were basically aliens before sci-fi become common. Mysterious creatures from another world who abducted people and then returned them with no memory of what happened. The fear some people have today of aliens is the same fear people back then had of the Cid, and if aliens did come to Earth at some point, which I don't think they did, they would have acted very similar to the way the Cid are described as acting. Of every myth and legend, the Fae are to me the most interesting and terrifying ones because of how alien they would be and how common the story of magic people coming and playing tricks to villagers were in most popular culture, and the cruelty in which they punished those who broke deals with them. Aliens, ghosts, gods, angels and devils all into one, wrapped in an almost human package. They are without a doubt the most terrifying and most fascinating creatures in any mythos. Considering the fact that we've recorded massive sea creatures moving faster and deeper than anything we know on sonar, along with the fact that we've explored, what is it, less than 2% of the ocean? We're also finding new sea creatures every single day. I realize that sounds far-fetched, but this is all at the top of my head, and from what I've heard from a number of sources. Whether they were all reliable or not, I honestly cannot recall. I think it's possible there's some big shit down there. Oh, and as someone else mentioned, shit in the deep woods. Not many people have gone to where I'm talking about. Even those that go miles into the woods stay on well-preserved trails. So how do we know there isn't shit miles into nowhere? We don't. I grew up on northern Ontario, and when I was a kid we'd fish lakes you had to fly into. There are thousands of them. No roads. As so many of us live in cities, we tend to lose sight of how fucking remote so much of the world really is. If you're ever in the woods and you find a staircase, do not go up. Canadians. They are just not as nice as the legends say. It's true. Lot of us are tremendous assholes. Source: I'm a tremendous asshole and I live in downtown Toronto. That toucan that drinks all those pints of Guinness. He's out there, irresponsibly flying while intoxicated, catcalling some seagulls, shitting in the bushes, gotta watch out for him. My girlfriend that goes to another school. She is real. She can't meet you because she's the head cheerleader and is always at practice at weekends. Wendigo and skinwalkers. Edit: guys, this comment got so many answers I can no longer read the new ones that are showing up because they, disappear from existence after I tap on them in my messages. I am from East Africa and we also have mythology about skinwalkers. The most famous story is about two lions called the Ghost and the Darkness. They were two adult male lions without manes. They killed many workers of a British colonial railway and took their bodies as trophies and stored the cadavers in their cave. This is very strange behavior for a lion or any other animal. Africans believe that the Ghost and the Darkness were two witch doctors that turned into lions to fight the colonialists that were destroying the animal's habitat. Both lions were eventually killed. They are now in a museum in America, I think. You know how I know that skinwalkers are real? Because the people who have seen them don't want to talk about them. And if you can convince them to talk about their sighting, a dead serious atmosphere settles in around you and they talk with a fear and reverence and like anything. What are skinwalkers? Too scared to Google at 2 AM. Skinwalkers are fucked. I read a few of the legends before going to my grandpa's last year after pressuring from my cousin. That shit is fucking scary, especially right before visiting your grandpa who lives on a huge piece of land that overlaps with Navajo land. You don't want to fuck with that. Mokelmbembe. A sauropod that lurks in the massive jungle swamp rainforest in Central Africa. Spent way too long scrolling to find this. The Congo Basin has so many remote areas, if a large cryptid did exist it would be the best place. Danny DeVito. I spotted him running naked through the woods of Vermont once. No one ever believes me, but I swear he really exists. Thunderbirds. For hundreds, if not 1000s of years, fairies have been throughout stories, literature, and tales. Little bright lights. Surly people were seeing something. Maybe it was assumed the orbs had tiny human form. IDK, could go hand in hand I suppose. Fireflies maybe? The Wendigo. Wendigo? About a half hour ago, mate. The Wendigo stems out of cautionary tales about the taboo of cannibalism among the Algonquin peoples. The idea of a malevolent spirit that infects and changes a person that resorted to cannibalism is fairly apt, and it's easy to see how the warnings morphed into the Wendigo. That said, tales of skinwalkers and their kind I believe have more truth to them than I am comfortable with. The Wendigo in Until Dawn really freaked me out. As a form of a traditional demon, the Baba Yaga, a witch Slavic folklore, had an imaginary friend named Baba Witch that lived in my barn when I was little. One time I was playing with it, and got locked in a room with no lock. I screamed for nearly 30 minutes before my mom got me out. Fast forward a few years, and I had gotten these things called creature cards, which were like big cards with pictures and facts about animals and monsters and stuff. When I saw the Baba Yaga, it looked almost exactly how I'd imagined Baba Witch. Fast forward to now, it all kind of clicked for me. El Chupacabra. It could very possibly be real. It really is not that crazy of a creature. I'm as for cryptozoology as the next guy, but I actually heard about a possible explanation for the Chupacabra. It's a coyote or some type of canine with scabies, mange, so they lose all their hair and start acting odd. There also have been people who released inbred dogs for hunting purposes, see Texas Blowdog, that were also called chupacabras. So those are possible answers for the Chupacabra. Though, it doesn't fit the bipedal version's cue dramatic music and lens flare. Edit, a word. Herobrine. Nick sewer alligators. In the early 20th century, small alligators as pets were apparently a popular thing among kids, and when they started to get too big, parents allegedly disposed of them by throwing them down the drains into the sewers like dead goldfish. I can totally see them living off the massive sewer rats and growing to be a decent size, and a dark dank muddy environment like the Nick Underground seems like a viable habitat for them. They were also the inspiration for Doc Connors from Spider-Man. Mermaids. Just because. When you've spent enough time at sea, even a manatee looks appealing. The orang pendek. It's a small bipedal ape supposedly inhabiting the rainforests of Sumatra. A group of scientists even claim they have distinctive footprints and hair samples, but it's not really confirmed if it exists. Edit. Fixed name. Dragons. We have reptiles, why not slightly bigger fire-spitting reptiles? Considering that dragon mythology exists in several parts of the world, I don't think it's impossible that early man coexisted with a large reptile of some sort, and these tales eventually got taken across the land bridge from to Asia and the Americas. Skinwalkers. Seriously. The number of askreddit threads I've seen with bizarre wolf creatures, large humanoids in the woods, and people discussing skinwalkers is downright chilling. Well used to exist, but giants. Too many ancient stories from completely independent cultural and ethnic groups globally to completely deny the possibility in my mind. In the not so distant past we had giant sloths, giant bears, giant cats, giant just about every other animal. Humans are animals, so remains a possibility to me that there were giant hominids as well. It's completely understandable why there would be completely independent cultural groups that have stories of giants. Like a person, but bigger isn't exactly a difficult concept to grasp or make up stories about. I'm not superstitious, and I don't necessarily believe in them, but I have Irish ancestry, so I do my best not to piss off the Fae. You probably won't see anyone openly believing in them, but a surprising percent of these people follow the Fae's rules, at least in my family. Trolls. Bastards are everywhere on the internet. I can just picture a censor walking into a pub somewhere up in Norway after a long day of doing whatever censors do. Birds, I mean, they could exist, and the government just spread the rumor of them being drones to us to hide the truth. I guess all my countrymen are still asleep down in the southern hemisphere, so no one's posted it. But the Min lights are definitely something real and more than just something you can blow off. Yowies are also probably out there, along with other things. Australia, same as Canada, is so big and so uninhabited that, at least to me, it's really not that hard to accept that there are things out there that we don't know about. I mean, for all we know, maybe these creatures are subterranean and are rarely on the surface. Fairies. The northern European kind. I live and work in the woods. I end up places where people simply don't go. Helicopter in and out kinds of forests. There's something out here I don't understand, but it certainly seems to understand me. I wear a sock inside out every day 'cause of it, a trick my nan taught me. Always wear a piece of clothing inside out or the fairies will take you. I don't fuck with the fairies. Alright, so in Minnesota there's this cryptid lumberjack folklore that exists called the tea kettler. To put it simply, it's a corgi with cat ears that walks backwards, by choice, and whistles like kettle. All it does is roam around forests and whistles, but it's super shy, so if you hear it you're lucky. It's so fucking cute I need it to exist, so the tea kettler. Giants. Throughout history the average height for a human was pretty damn short, so a 7-foot tall man, certainly not impossible, would definitely be a giant. Throw in some late surviving Neanderthals and you get what certainly looks like a giant. Skinwalkers. I have a story about those, actually. There's a local legend in Albuquerque, New Mexico, which involves a mysterious and supposedly deadly sort of otherworldly creature. Some versions claim that it's a man-like shapeshifter, capable of blending in with the shadows as it stalks through the desert. Others describe the beast as being curiously canine in nature, albeit with 2 long limbs, black claws, and eyes that seem to burn like pinprick embers in the darkness. One thing that remains the same through every retelling, though, is the high and eerie keening noise it's said to make when it hunts down its prey. One evening when I was about 11 years old, I heard it. I had been lying in bed, reading beneath my covers with a flashlight, when a mournful howl pierced the air from somewhere across the moonlit sands. My first thought was that it had been a coyote. But as the sound echoed through the night for a second time, I felt a shiver of panic flash up my spine and a deep weight of dread coalesce in my chest. That evil wail was not the call of anything I had ever encountered, nor of something that should have even existed in the waking world. It was the cry of a nightmare incarnate, and no amount of reason or rationality could shake me of that notion. Now, at around the same time as this story, I'd been doing my best to foster a reputation for being an independent and unflappable badass. That goal went swiftly out the window as the screeches seemed to draw ever closer, and I quickly ran from my room to seek the protection of my parents. Upon reaching their door, though, I was presented with an even more terrifying discovery. The howls were coming from inside the house, along with a lot of heavy breathing and the occasional whisper. I couldn't look my mother in the eye for a week. TLDR. Fucking skinwalkers. The Kraken. Sasquatch. There's only circumstantial or anecdotal evidence, but it still seems legitimate to me. I don't believe they are interdimensional travelers or some of the more silly crap people describe encountering. Those are fun stories, though. It just seems very plausible that there is something